All right, ladies and gentlemen, Trey Smith here. I have my trusty coffee, have my notes here, and we're going to talk about my favorite book probably ever. Well, when it revolves around startups, definitely my favorite startup book. And it's by Peter Thiel. It's called 0 to 1. Now, if you don't know Peter Thiel, to start off, this is one of the guys that founded PayPal with Elon Musk. And Peter Thiel is a genius. He's like that genius that's almost like on the spectrum genius. I'll give you a great example. If you guys ever watched the TV show, and if you haven't, strongly recommended Silicon Valley on HBO. In the first season, they go and talk to an investor, and this guy's really off the wall. I can't remember the actor's name. He's so great. Unfortunately, he died of cancer. This guy was amazing. Really broke my heart, man. Awesome actor. And anyway, so he's talking about how he's going to invest in sesame seeds because he buys a bunch of Burger King, he lays it all out on the table, and he notices that all of the Burger King items have sesame seeds on the buns. And he also just happens to know that sesame seeds only grow from a specific tree on a specific island, and that there happens to be a drought on that island right now. Therefore, the price of sesame seeds is going to go up, so he invests in sesame seeds and makes like a bunch of money. And then therefore he invests in the company. It's a really good episode. Anyway, that's based on a true story from Peter Thiel. He's that kind of guy, right? Who would know that sesame seeds come from a specific place and that they're in a drought and do all this crazy stuff. And when you watch this guy speak, I mean, he's a genius. I'm really huge fan. So when this book came out, I was already a big fan of Peter Thiel. And this is I believe the book came out before all the Hulk Hogan stuff. I'm not going to get into all that. I'm not going to talk about politics, any of that, right? This is all just about startups and him building businesses. And this book was phenomenal for that. So the name of the book, again, is called 0 to 1. I strongly recommend picking this one up. I might not recommend picking up every book. I might even tell you, hey, look, you're going to get everything from here. Some books really do just have a few golden nuggets in them, and then it's filled with a bunch of filler. This is the opposite. It's like all golden nuggets with very little filler. I think Peter Thiel, when you see this guy speak, he's not a filler type of guy. You know, I wouldn't think he would have been the salesman of the bunch, but you wouldn't think Elon would have been either. So what was the other guy? Max Levchin? Maybe he was. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the executive summary with you. I'm going to talk about this and how I used it in my company, BuildBox, primarily. I read this book. I'll try to give you some history on like when I actually read the book, because some of the books we're going to go over each week will be older, some are going to be newer. And this is when I was growing BuildBox, is when it was really instrumental for me. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. I might say Peter Theil a couple of times because that's how it's spelled, but it is pronounced Thiel as far as I'm concerned. If I botch it this whole video, just please keep it between us, okay? All right, so what is the secret to startup success? According to PayPal co-founder, entrepreneur, and venture capitalist Peter Thiel, a startup success is not a matter of mere luck. Now, he doesn't really get into something here. I don't think. I'm trying to remember. I read this book. It's been a couple years ago. I did a little brief catch up before this, but you know, we talk about luck. I want to touch on this because there is one really important thing when we're talking about startups. I don't want my throat to get dry, so I'm going to drink a little bit of coffee here. But I don't believe in luck. But let me tell you what I do believe in. Actually, that's not true. I do believe in luck. I don't believe in luck as being the only quantifiable entry into the result of why someone was successful. But I do believe in timing. I think timing is super important. Luck, yeah, you're going to have some luck for sure, right? Especially, hey, if you're born in a family and they have money and they invest in you or something like that, then that's a huge amount of luck that most people won't get, right? Or if you happen to be at a coffee shop and then you run into someone and they introduce you to Ron Conway, the famed investor here in Silicon Valley, and then boom, and that almost happened to me, right? Then that is a huge amount of luck. Okay, but in general, I don't think that luck is going to be the defining part of your success. I don't believe in that. I did not grow up in an environment, and I had great loving parents, all that. I don't mean that, but in an environment in Georgia, in a small town that knew about startups and all that kind of stuff. All right, but timing, I've seen time and time again, is impeccably important. You have to nail the timing, nail it, absolutely perfect timing. Make the right product at the right time for the right people. I believe in that 100%. So anyways, going back to Peter Thiel here, he says he does not believe a startup success is a matter of mere luck. In his book 0 to 1, he shares his own unique approach to creating a successful business, how you can do the same. You'll learn his philosophy and tips on challenging convention to build a successful and sustainable company in this summary. We'll cover all the key points and concepts in the book, including, and here's the major parts that we're going to cover here, why monopolies matter. He has a fantastically interesting aspect on monopolies, which is typically a dirty word, but not for him. The reason your startup should be 0 to 1 instead of 1 to N, I'll explain that in a second. The top 7 critical questions you should answer to avoid startup failure, and how to build and maintain a monopoly. And finally, the one trait most startup founders have. All right, so we're going to kick off with a quote here. All failed companies are the same. They failed to escape competition. That's a Peter Theil quote. Now, that's a big thing he talks about a lot. Escaping competition. And why monopolies end up working is because they do escape competition. Now, I'm going to tell you guys something. At a lower level, like even where we are with BuildBox today, it's a $30 million company, and we're in the game builder space, and we do have competitors, but it's a lot easier to escape competition when you're not doing 100 and 200 million revenue per year, and you're publicly traded on the stock market. So that is something that does scale over time, the difficulty. And it's interesting. We've been at this for 5 years. We're now seeing more relevant competitors popping up. We're seeing more funding being pushed into the space. We've stayed on top of it thus far, but it does present a new level of challenges, which to me is insanely exciting. I really like that stuff. So maybe I'll be able to touch on that some. So in a study by Statistic Brain, over 50% of startups fell within 4 to 5 years. Now, before we continue, if I don't agree with something, I'm going to say that as well. You hear a lot about all these startups failing. Now, you typically hear that a business like 80% fell in the first 4 to 5 years, but there is some pretty weird prerequisites for that. From what I understand, it's actually a lot better odds than what most people preach and what you read in books and stuff like that, because you have a lot that never actually start up very far, right? That's the first thing. How far are we talking about? Are we talking about actually opening up a business? It's not like we have a brick and mortar store, right? We have an office that I'm at now. We didn't have this for multiple years. So what constitutes actually starting a startup or a company? So there's a lot more to that. And some people will say it's not 80%. He's saying 50% here. Other people will say really most businesses succeed, and that that's more of a term used to scare people into buying products. I'm going to be honest with you, I kind of fall on that side. I've known a lot of people that start a lot of companies, and anyone that takes it really seriously, I've seen a lot of people have success. I've also, over the years, seen a lot of people say, hey, I'm starting an app business, don't really do anything, and they fail. Well, I don't even know if we should count those people, right? They didn't really give it. How hard are you going to try? And I tell you what, I have seen over time, people that don't give up and really focus on stuff, it's a pretty high chance in that case. But anyway, so Statistic Brain, the company here, would disagree with me. They say over 50% of startups fell within 4 to 5 years. And I'll tell you what, a great way to judge a startup or a company, in my opinion, is someone that actually takes revenue in and receives a check. If you actually get money in your bank account, I guarantee you if we looked at the numbers on that, it would be higher than 50%. So maybe I'm an optimist. All right, those results are staggering. Why do so many companies seem to miss the mark? Theil's theory is that they all failed to escape competition. They tried to copy other businesses instead of focusing on building the type of startup that offered something new. Now, this is interesting. I read this book about the time we were coming out with BuildBox 2, if I remember correctly. And that was a large focus of mine because of this book, to really make sure that we're doing something different. Now, luckily enough, with the first version of our software, we were already doing that. So everyone else out there was catering to a demographic, or I should say a customer type that knew a little bit about scripting and coding. And my target for creating games, if you don't know, BuildBox is game development software. It lets you make video games. My target was, hey, if you can use PowerPoint, Keynote, then you're going to be able to use our software. Where most people were like, okay, if you're pretty good at algebra and know a little bit of calculus and definitely some geometry. And so I was going for something different already from the start. I was actually just trying to create software for me because I'm not a coder. But this really solidified that we don't need to look too much at the competition. And to this day, we don't. When we decide the features to put in, and when I say we, I'm talking about me and Nick Rudenko. He's a CTO and partner at BuildBox. We don't talk about, hey, what is Game Salad doing lately? Or what is Construct 3? What do they put in there? We don't download it. We don't look at it. We don't care, because we talk to customers, and then we look and we make games ourselves, and we think, how can we make this better? How can we do what we want to do? Now, not to say that if a customer comes up and says, hey, look, they have an ad integration or even a feature that we really need, that we won't check it out and implement a feature. from a competitor, we will. We're not, we're not stupid about it, but at the same time, it's never the focus. It's never like, okay, we really have to look and copy what these guys are doing. Even with this product here, with BookReverse, I'm hoping that what I'm doing right here is going to be different than what other people are doing. I want this to be about this product that you join, to be about how I'm using this book in my business, so you can take some of this and take this conversation and use it for yourself. And I'm hoping you don't get that anywhere else. So you don't want to do things the same way. That was, not only do I agree with it, it actually kind of wasn't something I really thought about. I think I naturally did some of that, but after actually reading this book, it changed a lot of my outlook and how I focused on building companies. So then he goes on, the key to surviving the competition is becoming greater than all of your competitors. Here's another way to think about it. There are two types of progress. You have horizontal progress and you have vertical progress. When you expand on existing ideas and design, you make horizontal progress. Basically, you're going from 1 to N. Now, here's where the name of the book comes in. So when you expand on existing ideas, all right, if we went out and instead of making a totally new style of game builder, but we just said, you know what, we see what Game Salad's doing. They're pretty much doing scripting that's visual. Let's try to do the same. Then we would be expanding. We would be going from 1, it's already created, to N. And when you create something different, like offering a new service or product, you're making a vertical progress. You're going from 0 to 1. Now, he talks a little bit about PayPal in this, right? It's not like they did what all the banks were doing. They tried to create something totally new for the internet when it came to banking. They didn't just focus on taking existing banks and then putting them online. It was, hey, let's start something from the beginning where people can send and receive money online. It's not a regular institution. It's something totally new. Of course, making vertical progress is a lot harder because you have to be able to anticipate the future to come up with something unique and viable. That right there, guys, is the toughest part of any business. If you're going to try to create something new. And I do think it needs to be based in reality. Let me start there. This is important, okay? Because I don't want you guys seeing this type of stuff and we're discussing this and you're like, you know what? That's it. I'm going to make a machine that juggles gerbils. It's going to be amazing. This thing's going to automatically, it's only going to juggle gerbils, but it's going to automatically juggle them, never drop one. It's going to be perfect. Well, there's not going to be a market for it. All right. I'm really big. You're going to hear me say something a lot, and it's model and improve. You want to take something that's working and think about how to make that better. Just like PayPal would have done with banking, like we did with game development, just like Airbnb did with staying at hotels or renting rooms, right? Just like Uber did with renting cars. You want to take something that is a proven model that already works and make it better. That's going to be the easiest way to build success. Now, do you ever have people that invent something totally new? It's arguable. Go watch a great documentary called Everything is a Remix, all right? It's arguable. I was about to say yes, but the truth is it's arguable. Buddy of mine, Colin, got to cut it off. One day I'll get him on here, though. He'd be good for it. But, it's like we could even say, what about Atari? They came out with the first home console. Well, they ripped off Magnavox to create Pong. They ripped it off so bad that they got sued, right? Magnavox, if you go Google Magnavox Odyssey, you'll see that they created the game Pong. It looks identical to Pong, and Atari ripped it off, almost pixel for pixel. Got sued and had to pay them. It almost tanked the whole entire company. All right, so much more difficult to go from 0 to 1 and create something unique than 1 to infinity, right? And take something that already works and add on a little bit. At the same time, it is important to model and improve, so it's a balancing act, at least in my opinion. All right, of course, making vertical progress is a lot harder because you have to anticipate the future. Thiel strongly believes that the ability to see what others do not is essential for success. I'm going to go beyond that. I agree with that 1,000%, obviously. And you know what? Sometimes it's really difficult if you see something to say it. And I'll give you a great example. When ASO, that's App Store Optimization, that's how everyone was getting downloads in apps around 2014. It's how all of our customers were making a living, was off of ASO. And I saw this dying, and I saw so many people selling products and services around, hey, here's how to make money with ASO, with App Store Optimization. And what that is you type in like fun game, and then you rank number 3 for fun game. And I saw this not working. I predicted that this was going to fall because they changed. It was pretty obvious in my opinion. A lot of people didn't agree though, but it was pretty obvious because Apple changed the way search worked. They literally just made it difficult. They started changing the algorithm just like Google would on Google results, but Apple did it to show apps at the top that were either 1 week old or had a lot of downloads. And then they started using this card method instead of listing out a lot of results. They made a lot of changes that definitely did not help. And I think it's important if you're an industry leader, if you want to be an industry leader, to be open and honest about the changes you see. Now, this depends on what your focus is. I mean, with me, I wanted my customers to know what to focus on, and I wanted to be able to talk about this publicly to help out the community at large, the whole indie developer community, especially on mobile devices. Now, if you rather just keep things closed because you want to have a strategic vision that other people don't, that's okay too. But I think it's important to admit and know what's going on because that was a tough one. I came out, actually held an event and talked about ASO is dead and wrote a whole article on this. If you Google ASO is dead, you can read that. And it was very controversial. This is while other people, even honestly, some of my friends were coming out with products that were talking about how to do ASO and how to monetize this and make money with this. And I was saying, hey, it's all done. It's dead. It was a controversial thing, but it ended up being correct. And that's where it pays off. Because if you do make a stand for something and you're in a leadership role, and then people see that and they see that you did that and that you were honest with how you felt about things, and then you were correct on top of that, and you led them down the right path while everyone else was leading them down the wrong path, then that can be absolutely huge for your reputation, for your business, for your customers. So making a stand is definitely a good thing to do. All right, so he strongly believes the ability to see what others do not is essential for success. So when he's interviewing candidates for positions at his company, he always asks them during the interview, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? Honestly, probably the most annoying question to ever get in an interview, really putting people on the spot there. We'll talk about my interview process later, but I can see why it does get good results. I'll tell you what, this tricky question interview stuff seemed to be really popular in Silicon Valley about 5 years ago. I know that Google did this as well, and they dropped some of this stuff. It'd be interesting to know if he still does do that, but I think that's a pretty good one. That's not trying to trick them as much as some of the other ones that I've heard. And again, the question is, what important truth do very few people agree with you on? And you're asking someone this who's going to work in your company. Most likely if Peter Thiel is interviewing them, we're talking about a VP, a higher up person, right? And in that case, it makes a lot more sense than someone who's answering phones. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you're going to need critical thinkers at the top of your company, right? And you need someone who's not going to agree with everyone else on everything. But it's an interesting question because it makes them tell you what they believe that most people probably don't agree with. All right. You also find out if they're a little bit crazy. It may seem odd, but it's a very revealing question. You have to be the type of person who can think outside of the box. To sum it up, the best way to predict the future is to create it. I just hung up the phone with Nick Rudenko, my partner here at BuildBox, and without reading this, without thinking about it, this was something that we just had a long discussion about. It was about hyper-casual games, and it was about creating these hyper-casual games and how can we actually shape the future of what people do by pushing for or against this genre of gaming. And that's not something I'm going to get deep into now, but it's interesting to think about. Can you actually change the future by creating and pushing out messages? And that's kind of how the future happens. Pretty interesting stuff. So success is not about luck, but it's about mastery. Although we're taught diversification in education and skills, it can often be a hindrance. For real success, you need to laser focus in one area. Notably, if you're founding a startup, the right conditions and timing also play a critical role. And I couldn't remember if he talked about timing, but I'll tell you guys this. If we would have came out with BuildBox, for example, 2 years before or 2 years later than we did, it would have failed. The timing was absolutely impeccable for that. GameAcademy.com, which was our game training site. The reason I don't have that anymore is simply because BuildBox took over. And I'll give you guys the quick 5-second story of that. So Game Academy was doing really great. We were selling courses, but then the problem is YouTube started blowing up about that time. All right, YouTube really got big over the past 4 years. And there started being tons of competition for free on YouTube. But we didn't have that. When we started the first system that we sold, which was called the iPhone system, it was actually like the only thing that you could learn about making video games out there. So when YouTube really started taking off, there was a lot of free stuff. Then we saw sales starting to decline. At the same time, we saw customers complaining that they were getting ripped off by programmers because we had over 7,000 customers. We had sent so many people to outsource sites to hire programmers. They were cherry picking all the programmers off the outsource sites. So the ones left over were ripping off people. So we saw them having issues and we were like, hey, let's make software to solve this. Long story short, we're seeing a declining sales of the courses. It was still doing well, but it was definitely not going in the upwards trajectory. At the same time, we make this software that's just shooting up out of nowhere. So that's why we start focusing on the software. All right, so timing. I'm glad that he said that because timing, that's why I started this off. I believe timing really more than probably anything. And I think so many people get this wrong. So many people start creating the right game at the wrong time or the wrong game at the wrong time, the wrong startup at the wrong. I mean, just timing is absolutely essential. So for your company to survive far beyond that 5-year mark, you have to build and maintain a monopoly. And then here's another quote from Peter Thiel. I'm going to drink a little sip of coffee here. And here's him on monopolies. Monopoly is the condition of every successful business. The condition. I like that. Like almost like a medical disease. So the word monopoly has gotten a bad rep. We often associate the term with corrupt companies, but it's far from the truth. Monopolies matter. They push innovation and progress in society. Being a monopoly means that you're so good that you simply can't be duplicated. It's nearly impossible for your competitors to compete with you because you're so damn good. That's an interesting take on the word monopoly, right? And that was one thing I really liked about this book because I always thought of monopolies as being bad. When it's in the news, it's bad. But he's got a good point. If you're a monopoly, it's because you've done your job as CEO so good that no one can compete with you and you have just overtaken everyone. And he now gets into, I was about to say it, but he now gets into Google, which is a great one. An excellent example of a monopoly is Google. They own the search engine industry. The bar is set so high that there's no competition. For any company to compete with Google, they have to create a search engine that is better and capable of much more than Google. Better. All right? And capable, not better. And if for some reason a growing company does manage to surpass Google's technology, society as a whole will benefit the most from it. And this is interesting. And this is a big thing he focuses on with monopolies, is the fact that society is better off having a monopoly. And you wouldn't think that because you're like, it's not fair to the competitor. But the competitors are weak. If someone comes out with a better product, it's not going to be an issue. Thiel states monopoly is the condition of every successful business. Why? Well, having a monopoly gives you the freedom to set your own prices, which guarantees high profits. When your product isn't better than your competitors, you have to set your price range lower, yielding smaller profits. Now, that is interesting. We've had a lot of discussion internally about price over the years. And to think about it that way is the problem that the product's just not the best thing ever out there. And if you do have the best product just imaginable, you can charge pretty much anything. It's an interesting idea. When your product isn't better than the competition, you have to set your price range lower, yielding smaller profits. Google, for example, can retain over a quarter of its earnings as profits because of its monopoly in the search engine space. There are 4 determining factors that contribute to monopolies being successful. Here's the 4 factors: technological advantages, network effects, economies of scale, and branding. Let's go ahead and look over these real quick. We're going to do a quick summary of these. Technological advantage. To have a technological advantage, your company's technology must be 10 times better than the competition. Google excels at this. Its research algorithms are considered to be the fastest and most accurate at retrieving data, which makes them hard to beat. They're literally 10 times better than the competition. Network effects. or the value of your offer. Network effects deal with the value of your offering. The more users you have, the higher the benefit to each user, making it more difficult for others to compete with you later. A large part of Facebook's success is due to its network effect. There are 1.74 billion mobile active users on the social media site, so for any social platform to compete, they'd have to convince billions of people to switch over. So they are strong because of how many people are using it. Therefore, it's almost impossible to take down. It's a big reason that I invested in Facebook early and still to this day continue to put money in there regardless of how controversial it is. It's just really difficult. We've never seen a product do that, guys. Never seen a product with billions of people using it. Economies of scale, production costs. Economies of scale address your production costs. The more significant your volume is, the lower your average expenses will be. Most monopolies are the biggest producers in their trade, so they can offer more reasonable price options than their competition, which gives them an advantage. And then finally, branding and awareness. Branding equals awareness. A company with powerful branding will automatically have lower distribution costs and the ability to stay ahead of the market. A perfect example of this is Apple. They're known worldwide as a high-tech luxury brand. It would be difficult for a competitor to drive enough awareness from ads to steal that title. Thiel then suggests that you try to consider these 4 factors whenever you're analyzing a business. The best entrepreneurs know this. Every great business is built around a secret that's hidden from the outside. A great company is a conspiracy to change the world. When you share your secret, the recipient becomes a fellow conspirator. Pretty deep. There's always room for vertical progress and innovations to be made. To develop a 0 to 1 startup, you have to pursue the secrets in the world. Think about the things that are important, but seldom people know about or believe. For many tech startups, developing better technology than anyone else is an untapped niche, and that might be the answer. Hewlett-Packard dominated the 90s, releasing cutting-edge products like the all-in-one printer and fax machine, but they stopped innovating, and the company's value depreciated. To maintain your success, you have to be persistent with your vertical progress. Don't give up, stay with it. Building a successful business doesn't happen overnight. It can take years of hard work and dedication before your startup is profitable. Avoid focusing on the bottom line and think long term. Peter Thiel's company PayPal had a slow start. In 2001, it wasn't generating any profits. But when he analyzed the company's value, he discovered that most of it would derive from benefits estimated to come over a decade later. Luckily, he was prepared for the long haul and stuck it out. Remember, it's good to start small and expand slowly. Try to take the time to define your market and then procure a monopoly in that niche. And look, you can make a small monopoly and grow it out. And you'll find almost everyone did that, from Facebook starting with universities and growing out, Google starting very small and early in the search business and growing out. It's a very common way to do it. Aim to continue to grow your company and move on to the next broader market until you reach where you want to be. A great example here. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos' initial goal was to make Amazon the world's most significant online retailer, but he started small. First, he focused just on selling books. Once he mastered the book market, he expanded into CDs, DVDs, then electronics and clothing. Now Amazon is a go-to site for buying almost anything. Okay? It's very hard to go from 0 to 1 without a team. Peter Thiel. For your startup to survive, you must build a solid foundation. The first step is getting the right people on your team. More often than not, your startup will be small, so everyone on your team will play a critical role. So hiring the best people to help grow your company is essential. All right, so I'm going to close it out with a few more thoughts on this, okay? All right, this is something, first episode here, the first introduction to BookReverse I want to touch on. because I've done something a little bit different here, okay? I don't hire most of our employees through LinkedIn. Most of it is Craigslist, and honestly, most of our employees have come from Upwork, which used to be called Odesk, an outsourced site. And my partner, Nick Rudenko, the guy I talked about earlier, I found him in 2010 off of Odesk. I hired him to create our first video game. He lived in the Ukraine. Ended up moving him out here. He's now a partner in the company. He's CTO, does whatever he wants to do, and he's amazing, and he's been great. Tiana, who wrote all of this, she's from Upwork as well, back when it was Odesk. Now, the trick is I've probably posted somewhere around 1,000 ads on there, and out of that, I've probably interviewed 3,000, 4,000 people, and then out of that, I've actually hired, maybe 70, or maybe even 100 at this point. But the point is, I'm very, very picky. And we'll talk more about that over the next coming weeks, how I hire people and stuff like that. But it is important to be picky. It doesn't mean that you have to go to Harvard and try to find Harvard graduates with an MBA, all right? That is not what makes a company successful. I think finding people who are very passionate, who really believe in what you're doing, and who are excited to do it, and obviously knowledgeable, I think all of those are important. But the biggest thing is finding that right culture fit, someone you want to work with, someone that excites you about the project. I think that's huge, and that takes a lot of time. I think most people hire way too fast, way too fast. All right, guys, so that's a quick breakdown of my thoughts on 0 to 1, one of my favorite books. I recommend you definitely finish reading everything Tiana and the team here has wrote on this and the executive summary and all of that, and read the whole book. It's a great one. Hope you enjoyed this. Trey Smith, we'll talk to you later. Bye.